Hello, Leslie Wilcox here. I'm co-author of a new book, Becoming Strategic with Robotic Process Automation. So what's the rationale for writing a book in autumn 2019 on this subject? The answer is we researched this subject exhaustively, trying to write a book about artificial intelligence, but we found very rarely usage of artificial intelligence. In fact, what we found was people stumbling, sometimes abandoning robotic process automation projects. So what about the very few people who have been stumbling? That's what we studied. We studied the 20% of what we call leaders in becoming strategic with robotic process automation. The word strategic is highly abused. So what do we mean by it? We mean focusing on the relatively few uses of technology that give you disproportionate business advantage in terms of underpinning strategy or achieving competitive advantage. We mean taking a 3 to 5 year horizon, and we mean basically that it joins with the business imperatives and business strategy. So in the context of robotic process automation, what do the leaders do? Well, we have seen them do 6 things extremely well, which I'll outline in a minute, and they are edging towards a 7th, which we're recommending to people to adopt, which is about metrics. So I'm going to talk through very quickly what is on this slide that you see before you, the 7 attributes of the truly strategic organization using robotic process automation. The first attribute is that they focus on strategy rather than operational quick wins. What does that mean? Well, by strategy, we really mean that they link what they're doing with robotic process automation with what they're doing with cognitive automation, plans for artificial intelligence, and their digital transformation efforts. And we also mean that business imperatives drive all these technology investments. So typically what we've seen in the marketplace is clients really struggling up through various phases. So if you look at the next figure, you can see here that there are 4 phases through which organizations could typically go through with their RPA efforts. You can see that in some cases, many cases in fact, they start at phase 1, which is really a position of not really knowing very much about RPA and focusing on essentially headcount reductions, cost savings, those sorts of things. And what we find is organizations eventually struggle through to phase 2, through a series of making mistakes, hard learnings, and they still focus on a relatively narrow agenda. The really interesting takeoff point for organizations with RPA, and this is where all the strategic leaders are, is reaching phase 3 or having done phase 3, moving to phase 4. So in phase 3, what they typically do is aim much higher than any other organization. They tend to aim for what we call the triple win. This is looking for shareholder value, customer value, but also employee value. The secret of success here is the higher aspiration. By this date, also people are beginning to understand what the optimal action principles, as we call them, are in order to not just become strategic, but to execute the strategy. Relatively few organizations we have found are at this stage, and even fewer are at phase 4, where they have institutionalized RPA, where it's a platform for moving to complementary cognitive technologies as part of a digital transformation project. So that's the first attribute. The second attribute is that RPA is culturally embedded versus IT as usual. So what does this mean? Well, IT as usual is where you throw a technology problem or a new piece of software development across the wall to the IT department and allow them to develop everything. What you have to do with RPA is to accept that it's a business project day one. Therefore, you need business people involved. It needs to be culturally embedded that the automation will deliver on business imperatives and deliver on business goals. So you expect here a business project sponsor. You expect a business champion pushing for results from applying the technology. You expect business people like subject matter experts to be involved in the process of development, operationalization and enhancement. You do also expect the IT people to be involved, and you expect a distinctive group of people to develop which amalgamates both business capability and IT capability and automation capability. Usually they meet in a core capability called a center of excellence, an automation center of excellence perhaps. In some organizations that's what they call it. So there is this issue of being culturally embedded. The third item here is that organizations who are strategic go for very serious planning over a 3 to 5 year horizon rather than be extremely opportunistic. By opportunistic, what we've observed the majority of people doing, and by which we mean about 70% of the organizations we've researched, and we've researched over 450 deployments as at today. What people typically do is they look at pain points in the organization. They look where legacy systems and legacy processes are failing or could be improved, and they patch them over with robotic process automation software. Now, that was quite a good game to be in for a number of years, but really where robotic process automation is going to make a difference is supporting the creation of the new world of technology, as opposed to patching up the old world. That is the difference between planning for the new world as opposed to being opportunistic about patching over the old world. The next point I would make is that basically, in order to do this, the strategic leaders here go for program governance over a long period of time, over many processes and many functions within the organization, rather than focusing on a one-off project delivery of a particular RPA initiative. So here you would expect governance to be very powerful, set up again day one by the strategic leaders in this space, so that people know what the constitution is, the rules of the game, who is responsible for what the budgets are, who can spend the budgets, how all this relates as an integrated program, not just in terms of RPA projects, but also how they link to other technology projects in the organization. So the fifth point that I would make about strategic leaders is that increasingly they are realizing that this is not just a tool, RPA, it's become a platform. It's become a robust, flexible platform for enterprise technological capability. Many people talk as if RPA is past and it's all about much more sophisticated technologies. Unfortunately, that's a mistake because you still need the execution engine that is RPA. Increasingly, vendors and others are creating these platforms that enable RPA to connect up with powerful cognitive technologies that are complementary, and my phrase would be they are sort of RPA on steroids, a rather neat phrase, I think. And that creates much more opportunity, both business and technical, than you would have if you treated RPA just as a tool. The sixth point I would make is that fundamentally, this is all about, if you're going to do it strategically, change management, rather than tolerating being what I call a 7-siloed organization. Now think about that. The reason that a lot of technology initiatives, including RPA, stall is because they come up against 7 silos in the organization, more or less serious silos. So silos like processes are siloed, data is siloed, technology is siloed, managerial mindsets are siloed, skills are siloed, culture is siloed, and so is structure. Now, if you've got all 7 to a serious degree, then change management is not only just very difficult, it becomes ever more necessary. So the strategic leaders do change management very well. What they don't do so well, as a matter of observation from our research, as yet anyway, and something we recommend, is they don't do powerful metrics to guide your RPA and cognitive automation trajectories. So we've invented one, and I'll talk about this in the 6th video that I do. We've invented one called Total Value of Ownership Framework. It was invented by Knowledge Capital Partners. And just a very quick summary of why we invented that. A lot of people use quite traditional return on investment metrics to assess whether they should be investing in RPA. That's all right up to a point, but they tend to miss out an awful lot of soft costs and soft benefits. Another approach is to look at total cost of ownership that tries to identify all the costs involved in investing in RPA. The problem there is that they don't do benefits very well. They don't analyze benefits. And that actually very often causes certain political behavior. So if you can find less benefits, then it makes people understate costs. And so in a political game, you get both costs understated, but also benefits, and your aspirations are low. So in total value of ownership, we tell people to flush out all the costs and also all the potential benefits. Because if you now have an RPA technology set that is a platform, that platform is robust, flexible, and creates new kinds of benefits, new opportunities, new possibilities, new opportunities for innovation that were not there before. So why not try to assess what benefits you want to go after, having that particular platform in place? So we talk about benefits coming under 3 headings. Efficiency, which we all know quite a lot about. Effectiveness, which is about doing the right things rather than doing things better. And finally, enablement. And that's the really interesting area. The really big payoffs from RPA applications is going to be eventually down the road in terms of what it enables. More of that in our final video, video 6.